Growing up in the 2000s, one of my favorite movies was Austin Powers Goldmember. As a kid, I probably didn't understand half the jokes in this movie, but it still cracked me up. And now that I'm older, it seriously is so good. There's like a joke every minute, and you can rewatch it multiple times just to catch jokes that you missed. Now that I'm an adult, one thing that I love to look up is vintage Austin Powers stuff. I really want a whole collection of t-shirts. They're pretty hard to find, but they made so much of it, so I hope to have a big collection someday. While I was looking online for niche merchandise, I stumbled upon this vintage 2002 Pepsi commercial that actually stars Austin Powers and Britney Spears. I had never heard of Pepsi Twist before, and it does seem like a random two people to have star in a commercial, but it actually makes a lot of sense because at the beginning of the movie Goldmember, if you haven't seen it before, it starts out with this big musical number and Austin Powers wanders into this soundstage where Britney Spears is recording a music video. They get into this big dance off and it turns out that Britney Spears isn't actually a human, she's a robot, technically a fembot in the Austin Powers world, and Austin Powers dances and eventually makes her head explode. I know that's a lot, but if you've seen the movies, it makes sense. But anyways, in the Pepsi Twist commercial, it's definitely a really weird and strange commercial for Pepsi to make, but basically what happens is Austin Powers is in this like party and Britney Spears walks in with a Pepsi. Austin Powers realizes that it's not actually a Pepsi and he unzips it and it turns out to be a Pepsi Twist. This is a pretty common theme in the Pepsi Twist commercials where they unzip a Pepsi and it's actually a Pepsi Twist. I guess that's just to show that it's a spin on the idea of Pepsi. Not really sure why they did that, but it's a common theme. In the rest of the commercial, after Austin Powers unzips the normal Pepsi and it's a Pepsi Twist, he also looks at Britney Spears and says, "That's not Britney Spears. That's a man," and he tries to take her wig off or unzip her, and they get in this big fight.
And that's not Britney Spears. It's a man, baby.
Austin, it's me!
I want this wig! Come on! Fair enough.
Pepsi Twist and Diet Pepsi Twist, a twist on a great thing, baby.
That's definitely one of the craziest Pepsi commercials I've ever seen, and it got me really curious what other commercials they made during this Pepsi Twist campaign, and I was able to find a few. If the Austin Powers and Britney Spears commercial wasn't early 2000s enough for you, a year later in 2003, they made a commercial with the Osbournes, aka Ozzy Osbourne and his two kids. This commercial is pretty similar to the last one. It starts out with Ozzy Osbourne in the kitchen and his two kids, Jack and Kelly, come up to him. They're both holding Pepsi and tell Ozzy that they have a surprise, and when he gets up and asks them what the surprise is, they unzip their Pepsis and it turns out to be Pepsi Twist and Diet Pepsi Twist. And if that wasn't a surprise enough, they tell Ozzy they're not actually Osbournes, and he's like, "What?" And they unzip themselves, and they turn into Donnie and Marie Osmond.
These aren't Pepsis. They're Pepsi Twists.
You're a bunch of bloody magicians.
We're not the Osbournes.
You're not?
We're the Osmonds.
I'm a little bit country.
I'm a little bit rock and roll.
Now drum the kids turn into the husbands.
Oh, there, dear.
Like Twists, Pepsi Twist and Diet Pepsi Twist.
This commercial is the perfect encapsulation of the early 2000s. There was one other commercial in this series with Halle Berry. Very similar plotline in this commercial to the last commercial. Basically, each of the stars unzip themselves after they unzip the Pepsi, and they just turn into each other because they have really similar names.
I'm Halle Berry.
Drinking Pepsi Twist.
Well, it's not exactly Pepsi Twist. It's Diet Pepsi Twist. And I'm not exactly Halle Berry.
You know.
I'm Barry Bostwick.
Who is Barry Bostwick?
There were a few other random Pepsi Twist commercials, but I couldn't find any more from the Celebrity series, but there were a couple notable ones from Japan. Apparently Pepsi Twist was pretty popular in Japan and lasted a few years longer than it actually lasted here in America. One of the really cool ones I found featured Pepsi Man. This guy, I didn't really see any of him growing up, but apparently in Japan back in 1999, they made a PlayStation game featuring the Pepsi Man. He's basically the Silver Surfer, except he's got a Pepsi logo on his chest and he wears a silver chain. There are a few Pepsi Man commercials on YouTube that you should definitely go check out, but here's my favorite one. I'll definitely make a video on Pepsi Man in the future because he's so sick and there's a lot of different commercials to dive into, but he did end up making at least one Pepsi Twist commercial. I was able to find this one. Instead of his normal look, he actually has a ski mask on to make his head look like a lemon, which is pretty genius. And in this commercial, somebody's robbing a bank and Pepsi Man gets called. So he runs over, and when he opens the door, it turns out all the burglars have yellow ski masks on too. So he looks just like them, and he shuts the door. At the end of the commercial, he's getting arrested with the rest of the bank robbers, and yeah, he just basically got framed. I found one other Pepsi Man twist commercial, except this time, it's not Pepsi Man at all, it's Pepsi Woman. She's really similar to Pepsi Man, except there's one big difference. Well, maybe two big differences. I stumbled across this Pepsi Man Pepsi Twist t-shirt online. This would be so cool to find, but I don't know what the chances are of me actually finding one out in the wild at like a thrift store or something, because he wasn't popular in America, so I don't know how many are actually over here in America. They also made a couple minifigures like Lego brick guys that look like Pepsi Man and Pepsi Woman, and Pepsi Woman even has her ski mask on. There's a lot of other Pepsi Man merch that I'll get into in my future video, but if you guys get a chance, just Google Pepsi Man t-shirts and you'll see a few pop up, and they're really, really cool. As far as Pepsi Twist merchandise goes, there isn't that much that was made. Most of it is purely marketing, like a polo shirt with a little embroidered Pepsi Twist on it. Probably the best one they made, and it's so simple. It's just a white crew neck with a big Pepsi Twist in the middle. I would love to find one like this, even though it's nothing that special. Like I said, they made a lot of Austin Powers merchandise, so it didn't surprise me when I came across this Pepsi Twist Austin Powers shirt. On the front it says, "Do I make you thirsty, baby?" And then on the back it has a Pepsi Twist can and a Diet Pepsi Twist. Speaking of movie collaborations, Pepsi Twist also did a collab with Star Wars Episode 3 Revenge of the Sith in 2005. For this promotion, they obviously had different characters on bottles and cans, but they also sold these can toppers. Never found these before or even seen them in person, but they're really high quality characters that would sit on top of a can. They made a whole series of these, so there's a lot of different characters you can find, and when you turn them around and click a button, it plays the Star Wars theme song and the character talks. But what's even cooler is back in the late 90s, Pepsi started making these collectible bottle caps. For Star Wars, they made a bunch of different ones, like way more than the big can toppers, and they even made this big Death Star that they could all be displayed in. This is super sick. Somebody was selling one of these on eBay with the whole collection inside. Just like some of the other Pepsi merchandise, I've never seen these in America, but I'm guessing these Star Wars ones are. They were sold in these little plastic packages and they were wrapped around the neck of a Pepsi bottle. So every time you bought a Pepsi, you could get one of these collectible figures. I have a feeling that there's restrictions on this in America and that's why you don't see it that often, but you guys will have to let me know because I'm not really sure. These collectible bottle toppers must have been pretty popular in Japan because they made so many different ones. Early on in the late 90s, they made a bunch of different Pepsi Man ones, and there's actually sheets where you can see every figure that's available, and they're pretty hard to find. But specifically with Pepsi Twist branding, they had a Mario collection. These are so great because you can display them so easily. You can put them on a counter, on a shelf, or you can even put them on top of an actual Pepsi bottle. There was a Snoopy Peanuts collection. These are all from the early to mid 2000s, like 2002 through 2006. They also had a collection for the 25th anniversary of Gundam. Sorry, I don't know too much about this, but I believe it's a Japanese anime. There's a bunch of different designs for cap toppers with this, and also a few different Pepsi Twist t-shirts. Probably the best collectible cap topper set that Pepsi made wasn't even for Pepsi Twist, it was just a normal Pepsi line, but I wanted to mention this because it's just so cool and I'd never seen it before. It's a collaboration with Adidas that put mini sneakers on top of the caps. There's so many of them, and I don't know if this just deserves its own video in itself, but it's so cool. They're all so high quality, and I found this video here. Like, look, the textures seem right. They look like miniature versions of the shoes. Like, it was done so well. I saw somebody selling their collection on eBay, and there's so many of them. I'm not even sure if that's all of them that were made. There could be way more too. If anybody out there has seen any other Pepsi Twist merchandise that I left out in this video, make sure to leave it down below. I'm really curious. I would love to find more of this stuff, but it's pretty hard to dig up online. If you guys enjoyed this video, make sure to give it a like and subscribe to my channel. I make videos on vintage stuff all the time, so if you enjoyed this video, you'll probably enjoy some of my other ones. Thanks for watching.